This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, okay. All right, let's call the meeting to order. We have a quorum present. We have present with us also ex officio members, Dr. Forshaw, Mike Lynch, and Dr. Adley. And we have a special guest, David Cravenzola and Amy Samuelson from ONG and SLAM, respectively. Unfortunately, the minutes are not available from the last meeting, so we're going to skip over that. I'll have them out shortly to you. The next item of business really is the status of the town building permit and the mobilization plans for the project.
Right. So George couldn't join us this morning, so I'll give that update. So our permit, we are good with our permit. What we're doing right now out there is our field office was delivered. As you may have seen, we moved it a little bit yesterday to get it further away from the abutting property owner, and we're making accommodations to get it connected for power and internet so that we can actually start basing our operations out of there. And once that's up and running, Scott will be there full-time on site, and then George and Brian are going to they're going to take turns being there on site with COVID kind of ramping back up. We've got a company policy that we can't have more than 2 full-time people in that office because of the the size of the office. But when George or Brian are not there on site, they'll be working remotely. Sean's Lawns, they have been out. They're meeting with the tree warden and the arborist today to just go through that before the tree protection starts to go up. The surveyor is going to be on site on Monday establishing control, and then fencing is going to be going up early week. It's taken us a little longer than expected to get Sean's Lawns contract 100%, making sure that their insurance requirements were all squared away. So we are putting the bow on that, and they should be starting in earnest by the beginning of next week, which is we're about a week off of where we had anticipated we would be when we had done our last scheduled projection, the middle of November. But at this stage in the game, we'll make that time up. I'm not concerned about that, but we just had to make sure that the contracts were fully in place before we get their personnel on site. One other thing related to the permit is that the building department is going to need to see the erosion and sedimentation measures, all the silt fence, getting that temporary sediment pond constructed. They're going to want to see that all in place and inspected before they allow us to actually start foundation excavation. So as soon as Sean's Lawns is out there completing that, we'll have the town authorities out to do those inspections. I believe SLAM has been reviewing some of the submittals so far relative to some of the erosion and sedimentation. So that's all underway. We held a kickoff meeting with some of our safety trades this week just to outline the policies and procedures that we've been telling you about for months about safety, and then the coordination process, the BIM virtual design and construction process has kicked off, and we had a meeting actually at 9 o'clock this morning that I was not able to join because of getting ready for this, but that's also well in the works, getting all of our mechanical and electrical trades coordinating with the steel structure. So that's also underway.
So, David, when you're putting up the fence, will be going on next week, the fencing?
Yes.
And Sean's Lawns will start with the erosion control measures next week as well. Is that the intent?
Yes.
Okay, so actually having any excavation work probably won't begin until the week of the 21st, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, you'll start to see some equipment mobilized next week, but like I said, really we can't start any foundation excavation until the town has signed off on those erosion and sedimentation control measures.
Yep. Understood. Okay.
Hey, Dave, did you say, you mentioned in your outline there, which was great, a retention pond or runoff pond?
Yes.
Where is that located?
So that's located on the west side of the site. The southwest corner of the site is where that is going to be located. So we have to, We have to put some piping in along the south side. And if I would be fumbling to bring a logistics plan up here on the spot, but we have to run some temporary piping along the south side of the school and then establish a temporary stormwater runoff location. And that was all part of the town approvals we went through.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's in that would be found in one of the site, I think one of the early site plans, the one that goes from December of this year till February of 22.
Correct. That basin has to be in place until we start constructing the permanent stormwater detention system.
Right.
Thank you.
Dave, can I also ask a quick question here?
Sure.
So you had said that the fencing would likely go up at the beginning of next week. Can you just remind us of what that line is going to be now? Because I know we changed it a couple times and where the office was going to be. Just that initial fencing line.
Sure. And again, I apologize for not having a logistics plan at the ready here, but the way it's going to start is that we're not going into the parking lot at all. So the fence line is going to follow the south edge of the current parking lot so that the bus and student drop off, those areas will remain the same. So we are going to start constructing the wood fence along the building, the southeast corner of where the ELP classrooms are currently. But we're not going to move the fence out into the parking lot until we have to, until the foundation excavation gets out to that point. So the operations of getting students to their parent and bus vehicles will remain the same.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions? Again,
Excuse me, I do have a graphic of that on the screen if you'd like me to share it.
oh, do you?
Or
That'd be
it's
great.
not necessary, it's okay.
Amy, you're the best. I'll transfer you.
I just pulled up your presentation to the Board of Ed, Dave.
I'm glad that you were able. I'm glad you
were.
were able to access my information easier than me, Amy. That's great.
Oh, stop, you were busy talking.
And if you don't mind, while you're pulling that up, Amy, we did have a chance to walk with Scott Marlowe, the site supervisor, and some of the gentlemen doing the excavation work, and to look at where that fence comes around to the back of the field, so we see how much field space we're going to have to accommodate. And so we have already been in conversation with, where we're going to move recess to and how we're going to accommodate for PE based on that plan so far. So we're all synced up on that.
Okay.
And Luke, that communication's going well so far with Scott out there?
Yeah, it's great. So we've got a group thread going now between myself, Mike Lynch, Scott, and that seems to be the point of contact. And it's just exciting to see that trailer up and just keeping the steps forward. So yeah, we're on a group thread and engaged.
Great. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so this is right here is the temporary fencing to keep the parking lots fully engaged as currently the case is until we have to dig out through here, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
And
this
so,
is the-
and
Go
the
ahead.
temporary pipe that Dave was talking about would go right here along this yellow route
Right.
between the fence lines and go down to the temporary storm detention, which won't really be a perfect square, but it will be in this area.
Hey, Dave, you had mentioned moving the trailer around. Was there an issue or from the neighbors or anything like that that we need to stay on top of?
No, I think we want to be a good neighbor for the project. So
Sure.
we had pushed it relatively close to the property line. Then there was some discussion about, adhering to setbacks for temporary structures versus permanent. And it was easy enough. We weren't connected yet. So we said, you know what, if it's going to make things better to move a little further away, let's do it. So it wasn't a real issue. Like I said, we just didn't want our first step out there to be something that offended anyone. So we moved it a little further away from that property line.
That's great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
It's still in the same general location, is that correct?
Yes.
Any other questions for Dave or anybody else on the mobilization plan? Okay, going to item number 4, a cost summary of where we stand as of, well, I said December 7th, but actually as of last night as well. Our total project, which was a budget for 63 million, is now at 57.7 million. Here's how it breaks out. Construction costs now, so far, with all of the scope reviews, not totally complete, but well, the big numbers are done, is 43,798,000. We still have the same number in for reimbursables of 2,458,000. Contingency drops a little bit because it's based on a 3% number, so that's 1,003,000. We didn't move the performance and payment bonds or insurance for the general contractor at all. That's 828,000. And the fees came down a little bit because the cost came down a little bit. So total construction costs, which were budgeted or which were in August, were at 55,693,000, are now 49,515,000. And we take that together with the soft costs. We knew that we had security system was redundant in soft costs. We took that out. The owner's contingency of 4.5%, it gets reduced because the total cost gets reduced. So we're down to 57.745. We originally had been at 64,431,000 in August against a budget of 63 million. Now we still have the total contingency between the contingency that's being held by the construction group, the construction managers, and our own contingency is $3.8 million, or 7% of the total contract. So we still have a fairly robust contingency allowance. I give that to you as background before we go into talking about the individual scope reviews and additional approvals for building packages, just to give you an idea where we are. So we're below our budget number by a pretty good amount. There's still going to be possibilities of things changing. And so don't count your chickens yet, as they say. But we're going in the right direction. And that was the report basically that John Zagrodzky gave on the Board of Finance for the State of the Town speech, or the numbers he presented. So with that in mind, if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. So we'll keep trying to work in the right direction here. So the next item of business, and the real purpose of this meeting, is to review certain bid packages that have been scope reviewed and to approve them as such. David, I'm going to let you, we're going to do this all in one shot, if you will, rather than do a motion for each package. Unless you, if there's any questions along the way, let's stop and have the questions at the time, okay?
Okay. All right, we'll start with, this is bid package, sorry, I'm just gonna put these in order here. Where is am I missing one? Bear with me one. I am missing one. Okay, we are starting with bid package 1.01, building abatement and demolition. We did, in this instance, we did scope both the second bidder. We scoped them on Tuesday and had a conversation with them about what they thought maybe were some of the differences between their bid and the low bid. We scoped American Environmental yesterday, and we asked very pointed questions about the scope and items that we had heard may have been missed from their bid. They confirmed that they had those specific portions of scope. We had the industrial hygienics present for the both meetings as well. And after review and confirmation from American Environmental that they did include the scope we had questioned, we've reviewed their information and are asking for approval to enter into a contract with American Environmental Inc. for the contract amount of $1,150,000 for bid package 1.01, building abatement and demolition. there any questions about bid package 1.01?
I just wanted to add that the next highest bidder was about $400,000 higher. So it was very, very heartening to hear that American Environmental had included all the items in their bid. They were significantly lower.
And I did have a conversation with the project manager who was heading up our team in Groton, and just had American Environmental do a similar scope of work for them, and received good feedback from them on that. So,
Mike Lynch, have you worked with this group?
No, I have not. No.
All right, but it's good to hear what Dave just said. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Very good.
okay, we'll move on to the next approval letter. This is for bid package 1.02C playground, Compan. And a scope review, we scoped them, I believe it was on Tuesday, we scoped them in the morning. Those meetings are all seem to be running together, but there are two alternates that we'll talk about here shortly. But after review of their scope review, we're asking for approval to enter into a contract with Compan for the contract amount of $445,971, plus any accepted alternates for bid package 1.02C playgrounds for the Oxridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay, having none, we'll move on to bid package 1.02B landscaping. We scope reviewed TC Lawn Care, who was the apparent low bidder. Through that review, no issues of scope were raised. There were a couple of alternates that some of the other bidders priced. They had said that they were not, they were inconsequential, so they were really no dollar value impact for them either way. So with that, we're asking for approval to enter into a contract with TC Lawn Care LLC for the contract amount of $369,606 for bid package 1.02B landscaping for the Oxridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none. We'll move on to bid package 1.05B miscellaneous metals. We scoped Steel Tech Building Products. Again, they have one alternate that's going to be discussed today. No issues raised during their scope review meeting. Have all the scope. So with that, we are asking for approval to enter into a contract with Steel Tech Building Products for the contract amount of $357,428, plus any accepted alternates for bid package 1.05B miscellaneous metals for the Oxridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Everyone can hear me though, right?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yes.
making sure. Okay. Trying to seem like this was too easy, but okay, just making sure. Okay, next is 1.06B architectural woodwork. We scoped Nova Wood Products Limited. They had a apparent low bid amount of $926,800. Through the scope review, no issues arose. They had the scope of work and were qualified. So we are asking for approval to enter into a contract with Nova Wood Products Limited for the contract amount of $926,800 for bid package 1.06B architectural woodwork for the Oxridge Elementary School project. Any questions?
David, my only question is, where are they located out of, or where are they centered?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can follow up on that, Kip, and let you know.
Okay, just a matter of curiosity. It's not an issue to approve or disapprove.
Yep, I'll let you know that as soon as I can dig into my files there.
Okay, great.
I believe they're a Canadian company.
Really? Interesting.
But I don't know if they have, they're headquartered in Canada. I don't know if they have local
Local
facilities.
representation, yeah.
Mhm.
Because a lot of this stuff is what, built from shop drawings and all that kind of stuff?
That's correct.
Yes.
Mhm.
There'll be a series
Okay.
of drawing. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is bid package 1.07B, spray fireproofing. We had scoped Island International Industries, New England LLC, who was the apparent low bidder. Through that scope review, no issues were raised with respect to them having the required scope. There was one minor item that was about a primer for intumescent paint, and I think that they had said that they did not include it in their bid. However, we had asked them to go back after the scope review and confirm if they would be able to provide that scope of work under their bid amount. After going back, they did confirm that they are able to perform that work. It's relatively minor in scope. I think the amount of intumescent on this project is relatively limited, Amy. So this would be a primer that would go on the steel members before that. So I think given the minor scope of that, they were able to accept that work within their bid. We have that documented in the scope review minutes. And so with that, we are asking for approval to enter into a contract with Island International Industries, New England LLC for the contract amount of $347,000 for bid package 1.07B, spray fireproofing for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay.
I'll just add to the committee's benefit that many of these scope reviews, the kind of detail that we go into reveals a lot of information, and there's much more than just the asking do they agree with the number, and talking about the issue of that primer issue, which was it turned out to be a small issue, is the kind of detail that these scope reviews pull out, and so there's a lot of understanding at the end of the scope review rather than just the amount and who the guy is.
Thanks for adding that, Kip. I bet you have you've attended quite a few. I bet you have our general information just about memorized at this point.
I have the general, but I don't have all those wonderful responses to the RFIs and all the other stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff I have never seen, but obviously you guys do a lot of digging and making these guys really go through a whole bunch of hurdles before the bid is even accepted or reviewed.
Well, this is the honeymoon phase. This is when you get them to agree to all these things and work it out, right? It's setting us all up for success here early. So hopefully it typically pays dividends throughout the project. So it's worth the time spent.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, next we're moving to bid package 1.09A, acoustical. Con Acoustics Inc. was the apparent low bidder. We scoped them, and no issues relative to the scope that they had included and their understanding of the contract documents. So with that, we're asking for approval to enter into a contract with Con Acoustics for the contract amount of $598,415 for bid package 1.09A, acoustical for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay. Next is drywall. This was a relatively large package. So we did actually first scope Con Acoustics. They were number 2, and in this $2.9 million contract, they were only $45,000 off with the second place bid. So we didn't necessarily think that there was any misscope. However, we figured we would talk to the second place bidder just in the event that there was something that came up on a contract of this size. Through the scope review with GDS, they had identified all the scope of work was present, and their project approach was in line with the contract documents. So we found them to be the lowest qualified responsible bidder. So we're asking for your approval to enter into a contract with GDS Contracting Corp. For the contract amount of $2,940,315 for bid package 1.09B, drywall for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. Any questions?
David, was this the one where they determined that a certain amount of drywall going toward the exterior was not necessary? I probably haven't got that quite right.
This was the bid package where we had the discussion, and I forgot which of the bidders brought it up, but the discussion was about the clips for the cold form metal framing where it attaches to the steel, how that interfaces with the spray foam insulation, and wanting to maintain the movement in the framing system while still providing the barrier and the insulation. So that is one item that came out of this, is that once we move into construction, there will be a proposal request issued by the design team. We are going to be modifying that detail, and I believe, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the detail is going to be modified as such to reduce the amount of the spray foam a little bit so that the cold form metal framing clip can remain in its design location but not be encased in the spray foam.
That's correct. And that only happens around the top, between the parapet and the roof edge.
Right.
So that's an item as we move forward, fast forward a period of time here, we'll be bringing a change order proposal to the building committee for approval for a reduction in scope. So that'll be a credit that'll be provided to the project. But given the public bidding environment, there was no adjustment that we could make to that scope through the bidding process. So that's why we know it's a change that's going to come when we get into construction. And good news, we're starting off with a credit. So it's good.
We won't have many, I bet. Okay.
You never know. So I believe I read this off. So without any other questions, we'll move on to the next. Next is 1.09C flooring, tile, carpet, and resilient flooring. We had scoped M. Frank Higgins and Company, who's the apparent low bidder with a bid of $766,997. We scoped them. No issues arose with their understanding of the project and the scope of work included. That being said, we are asking for approval to enter into a contract with M. Frank Higgins and Company, Inc. for the contract amount of $766,997 for bid package 1.09C flooring, tile, carpet, and resilient for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay. Two more. Next is bid package 1.09D painting. We had scoped M&P Painting LLC, who was the apparent low bidder. Through that scope review, they determined that we had determined that they had included all of the scope and the contract requirements. So we are asking for approval to enter into a contract with M&P Painting LLC for the contract amount of $348,000 for bid package 1.09D painting for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. Any questions? Okay, lastly for today is bid package 1.16 communications. And this was one that we did end up having to scope all three bidders. We had started with, I believe it was Mercury Communications almost 2 weeks ago. They, through the scope review and thanks to having the design team and their consultant on the phone, we were able to realize that there was some scope of work that they had not included. So Mercury Communications, who was the apparent low bidder, they withdrew their bid, and the approval letters have those withdrawal letters here. So the withdrawal letters for Mercury and JKS were submitted to the state and the town the same way that the bid was, which was, we needed that. And those two withdrawal letters are in this packet for the committee's record. But both of them had not included the scope of work related to all of the conduits and boxes for the communication systems. They had interpreted it that the electrical contractor was going to be providing all of those raceways for them and did not include that work. But the way that we wrote the bid packages, we asked them to be responsible for it because there's it's a higher chance that those raceways and boxes are going to be in the locations and via the routing that the communications contractor wants, rather than having someone else provide the conduits for their wiring. So after having the two low bidders withdraw, we scoped J.E. Shea Electric Inc., and they had confirmed that they did include that scope of work. And so I believe if we look at the bid tabulation here, Mercury Group was at almost $600,000, followed by JKS at $723,000. J.E. Shea was at $1,130,000. So there was an increase there, but we were able to identify the scope of work which had not been included in the other bidders. That being said, we are asking for the committee's approval to enter into a contract with J.E. Shea Electric Inc. for the contract amount of $1,130,000 for bid package 1.16 communications for the Oxbridge Elementary School project. That concludes the approval letters. Are there any?
School district has used J.E. Shea multiple times. They're an excellent vendor. Very good vendor.
That's good to hear. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. I believe, David, I believe that was the most of all of the bid packages that we've gone through so far. That was the most significant dollar-wise in terms of an adjustment from what we thought was a low bidder to where we are today.
It absolutely was. Yep, and it was really the one that we never, in none of the other ones required us to actually have to go to the third bidder. So
right.
So that concludes the approval letters for today. I do want to let everyone know that there are 4 bid packages that are remaining to be scoped, which we are intending to do so that we can have those approval letters for next week's meeting and then be done with approval letters. Those packages are food service equipment, which again, we don't need food service equipment until the assembly wing turns over. Window treatments, fire stopping, which is the sealing of pipes and ducts as they pass through wall or ceiling assemblies, and then final cleaning. And I believe the collective amount of those packages, if I could just, if I total quickly here, it's less than $500,000 of contracts, I believe, that were left to scope out. So we are a majority of the way there, and we've actually started to compile our guaranteed maximum price packet because we know a majority of the cost at this point.
Thank you, David. I will make a motion, and I'm going to try and make this as clear as possible, but using the numbers. I'm putting a motion to approve the following bid packages, which have been through scope review and are presented today by O&G. That is bid package number 1.01, abatement and demo, 1.02 playground, 1.02B landscape, 1.05B miscellaneous, 1.06B architectural woodwork, 1.07B spray fireproofing, 1.09A acoustical, 1.09C flooring, 1.09D painting, 1.16 communications. The intent would be to approve the bid amounts that have been scoped as presented today. And may I have a second for that motion?
Excuse me, Kip, I think there is one drywall, 1.09B drywall as well.
I missed one? Good God. 1.09 what?
B.
Oh, 1.09B, excuse me. Thank you, Diane. Okay, including drywall. May I have a second for that motion, please?
I will second with that addition.
Is there any discussion, any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, would you all those in favor, please just say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Kip, I did want to let you know, I did just check, and Nova Wood Products is out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Interesting. Thank you.
So if I could just make a comment, just having sat in on a couple of these meetings, I wanted to commend ONG and AP for their organization and their diligence and details. And George has really done a fabulous job kind of patiently walking through the all the items with the all the different bidders and subcontractors. So yeah, I just want to commend you for that. And also, if I could ask George or Dave yourself, if you guys could just let us know about the meetings next week, so we can keep on top of that schedule, and we,
Yes.
you know, we can get building members to attend to those. Thanks.
No problem.
Also, one comment: who would have thought that drywall cost $3 million for this project? I mean, that's incredible.
Well, when you think about it, you know, a majority of the partitions in the building are all made out of, they're all drywall partitions. So it's quite
We
a bit.
all have to be taped.
Yep.
And I would like to second Diane's comments and also add that I hope that some of the other members of the committee besides Diane, Katie, myself, will be able to attend one of the 4 remaining scope reviews. They aren't anywhere near as long as you think they are, and they're quite an eye opener in terms of what you learn about the various issues that are going through.
Well, and I must say that the ones that are left, I would say if all 4 of those scope reviews, we will probably conduct all 4 of those scope reviews in less than 2 hours worth of time. It's going to take more time to read through the standard stuff about, you know, do they have the safety procedures? Do they have their bond? All that stuff. The nuts and bolts for those packages is very, 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 very minor. So don't feel like you're going to be stuck on a meeting for 2 hours. The window treatment one, it'll probably be 25 to 30 minutes. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, for our next item, the next item of business is to discuss alternatives that are in our program. And I'm going to turn that over to Amy to present.
Thank you. Let's see. Now am I able to share my screen? And are you seeing a picture of the building?
Yes, we are.
Anybody not seeing a picture of the building?
All right. So on this slide, I've just listed the project alternates that Dave sent, I believe, as a part of this package. And Dave, I'll have you go through the cost of each as I proceed through the next slides.
Sure, and just obviously, one thing I did want to add is that at the time that we had published this, we had not scoped Steel Tech and Compan, so I had flagged those as that they could have fluctuated. However, the version that I have on my screen here is up to date, and that we have scoped those trades. You just approved them, so that there's no issue with those numbers changing.
Okay, great. So those those numbers that are highlighted in yellow are actually accurate at this point. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So moving through each alternate on its own, you had requested a bit of a refresher so that you knew what scope was included in each. So this is alternate S1, the raised garden area. The value of this is an additional $15,000 to the project cost. If there is no garden area in this plan, in this area, it will be seeded lawn instead. And your patio for your cafeteria will remain, and this will just be a grass area, if you can see my cursor. But what I've shown here is the plan of that area. In the alternate version, if you do approve it, would have 8 planter boxes. They're 2 feet tall each. This is a detail of it at the bottom. and a fence around the garden area, which is 4 feet tall, cedar posts and rail with vinyl coated wire mesh infill. There's space in here also for a compost area and for some tool storage.
Quick question, the intent is for us to accept or reject all these today?
That's correct. I'll let Dave, kind of opine on whether or not some of these can be approved later, dependent upon the, how soon he wants to get those particular pieces contracted.
Right. So certainly what we've done is we've highlighted in green the ones that we believe we need to make some sort of decision, right away. These other ones, Nick, we do have some time with those. Whatever alternates are not accepted when we go to put the guaranteed maximum price together, we'll just have to set them aside as either we agree to establish them as allowances or just, figure out how we want to leave the door open to accept them later. But as many as we can accept today, the cleaner the process of getting the contracts out to the trades and getting the GMP together is. So it's really within whatever the committee's threshold is for approval today, we'll take it.
Got it. Thank you.
So with that said, I wonder if you'd like to have me present all of the alternates and then we can have discussion afterwards, or if you want to stop and have discussion at each one, for example, this one.
Well, Amy, I would suggest that we have minimal discussion after each one, but there may be one or two things that should be mentioned or for clarification. For example, on this one, I'm looking specifically at a document put together by ONG, which is their detailed construction documents, 100% construction documents. And at the very last page was potential alternates. And S1, the garden beds, composting bins, and cedar fence was listed as a proposed amount of $81,685. In the value management, it was at $56,000, but here it's at 15. Is 15 the same scope of project that was originally discussed in value management?
Yes, it is.
So Sean's Lawn brought the cost way down from what we thought it might cost.
Correct.
Right. And one thing that we are working on is, the actual planters themselves, OWI, we're working with OWI on the actual planters. They're the ones responsible for doing the planter boxes themselves. So we are working with them on that, but there's no cost for OWI in accepting this alternate because of the way that they interpreted it. So
this one seems to be.
I have a question for Mike.
That Luke, Katie, and Duke should be able to opine on.
I had a question for Mike Lynch. Who's going to do the weeding?
Kip's going to do the weeding on the weekends.
Not even close.
My only add here is I think the gardens, they're different at each school. They become important to the schools. I think it's something they've worked hard at. I think there's a lot of stuff that's been donated by the PTOs and stuff like that. So I think it's an important component and probably more so as we go forward. So I would leave the rest up to kind of Luke and Katie from a parent standpoint and a PTO standpoint.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. Typically the gardens are maintained by the PTO in conjunction with the kids. Sometimes there might be a Girl Scout troop who would volunteer to weed it for a certain month. Even as the school year comes to a close, whatever parent committee chair has been overseeing that will send out something to the entire school asking for people to come and volunteer. And families will sign up a week at a time to maintain the garden when the school is closed and to harvest things. The kids really, really enjoy it. I mean, little kids love seeing things grow. And I think what's particularly exciting about this project is the adjacent location to the cafeteria. I think that that's just a really, really nice thing to constantly be reminding kids like where their food comes from and that they can be part of it. So I'm a big fan of this addition or accepting this alternate.
The only question I would throw out there as we're doing all this work, and I didn't dig into the scope on this, is there any irrigation out there specific to the garden? Or is it just more of a faucet and a hose? Is that?
There is a hose bib included in this area.
Okay.
Yeah, the existing garden does have some irrigation, and it was all, you're right, it was a volunteer project directed by families and myself and the school. And so I agree completely with Katie. It's important for the community. It's important for the kids. And I do think the location, both in terms of the cafeteria proximity and then in terms of having folks get onto campus during the off hours and be able to access it like we've historically done for the community at large, is a good thing. So I think it's terrific.
I would just say two things. Ox Ridge is one of the elementaries that has a more active group of parents and kids taking care of the garden all year round. And the current garden has sprinkler system in it, but it is tied into a hose bib on the building. It's not, you know, off a water main type of sprinkler system. It's very simple, but it works perfectly. So this is a nice thing.
So it's possible it's possible that same irrigation system could be reused here because we're providing a hose bib, or it might be time to replace it. I don't know.
It's not that old. It's probably about 8 years old, but it was a donation from one of the sprinkler companies in town. So they might be willing to redonate and upgrade.
It sounds to me like this one's going to be approved. So why don't we move on to the next one? We'll come back and approve it all at the end, whatever we're going to approve.
Next is the embankment slide. This is valued at $17,857. It's the image on the left-hand side of your screen is from a very early rendition during design development. So I just want to let you know that it's about half the length of what you see here. More in line with this image, this is the actual product data from Compan. This is the plan view for our particular project, and in the upper right-hand corner, I've clipped in from our documents that there would be an extension of a sidewalk, a little sloped walk adjacent to the stairs that access the playground. Again, this image on the left, an older version, the stairs are no longer quite that wide. I think in one of the value management sessions, we reduced the width of that stair by 2 or 3 feet. But it's still a generous sized stair coming down. As you see in this image on the upper right, a little extension walk will take you to the top of that slide. Jessica's design for the landscape is in the alternate, modifies the slope to accommodate this slide and has a landing area that's flat and with the right material that you would need at the bottom for landing. And then the student who uses this can safely move across a low sloped area and meet the other kids at the playground. But definitely a fun addition to the access to the playground. I can picture people lined up to get down to the playground using the slide rather than using the stairs. But not necessary, and that's why we planned it as an alternate, because the playground itself does have plenty of play opportunities.
Can the slide accommodate adults?
Sure it can, yes.
Amy, you may have just mentioned it, I just caught it, but is there any ADA compliant issues there?
It is accessible in that the route to the slide and the route from the slide are both the appropriate slopes.
All right, okay.
So that's fine. I think someone would have to meet, if a student was wheelchair bound, someone would have to obviously take the ramp around and back to the bottom of the slide and meet the student there.
Do we have any liability issues with this?
No more than any playground equipment or slide that you already might have.
Okay, because I mean, it says they're going to be sliding down feet first, but we all know that doesn't always happen.
Some of them might be rolling down the hill next to the slide anyway. That's what kids do.
Not during school hours, I'm gonna tell you.
Thank you, Luke.
Luke, Katie, what's your thoughts on this? My question was the liability. It seems a little outside of the scope of a normal playground, but that doesn't seem to be an issue. The ADA question, needed to be answered, but what's your thought on it?
Okay, all right, you're leaving it for me, Luke.
I'm just happy to join in. I mean, listen, I think it's fun. I think it's one of those flair features that we talked about when we were building out this project, to have something that's a little more signature, a little more exciting for kids. It's the proximity to the playground is what's most important to me, because in terms of, supervising during recess time and making sure it's used appropriately, we can do all that. And I just feel like it's a fun addition if we can put it in.
Not to be presumptuous, but it might be a nice PTO thing to do, perhaps.
Well, you're absolutely right, Dr. Adley, that as far as I was concerned, the PTO was never going to let this one go by, barring any safety concerns. I think that this is something that, from even our very, very youngest kids can get so excited about the new building. This is really something that will help them get through the construction months and is really a buzzword. And I feel like people will go to college talking about how they slid from the cafeteria down to the playground. So I'm a big fan of this. I think it's important to keep the fun in the schools. So thank you for working this around and keeping it there.
And the cost includes everything we see there, right?
Katie, would there be the receptiveness to actually consider that as a gift type thing or not? Or, I mean, you think?
Yes, absolutely. I have been in contact with this year's current chairs about this all along the way since it initially got cut, and there is overwhelming parent support. It would take just a tiny bit of time in order to go through the proper channels. It would need to come in front of the exec board, but I have every confidence that it would be a gift happy to be given.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on and keeping in the same area of the project, you might recall these curved stairs that provide a little seating area, maybe a group gathering zone for an outdoor reading project or small presentation. These stairs are actually the base bid. The reduction in cost is $7,838 to change the stairs that kind of curve and follow the sidewalk to something that is just a straight shot regular stair with railings on both sides. So again, this is a deduct alternate. This was included in the package to help control the cost if we were in fact over budget. But right now, the curved stairs are in your base bid, and if you wanted to reduce the cost of site work, we could select the straight stairs.
Okay.
So I'll move right on. This one's a high value alternate and one that should be considered carefully. This is rubberized, poured in place playground surfacing that would be included under both of the playgrounds if this was accepted. The base bid is a wood mulch, very similar, in fact, the same as what you have currently at Oxridge and what you have, I believe, at all of the other elementary schools, at least from what we could see from the research that we did by looking at site plans in town. So the upgrade to playground surfacing is almost $200,000. It is a rubberized surfacing, but it's definitely far less maintenance and would provide the appropriate surfacing. It also provides a design element, as you can see. In our image, when we were doing the design renderings, we showed a pattern here. The actual pattern is shown on the right. It would be more in the blues, 2 different blue colors and green rather than introducing purple, but nonetheless, the rubberized surfacing. So I don't know if Mike Lynch, you might have something to mention about it.
I started putting in these types of surfacing in my other school district back around like 15 years ago. They will last as long as your playground structure, 20, 25 years without any maintenance needed at all. And the amount of mulch you would put into this, if you went with the wood, the amount of mulch you'd put in every year and the labor to spread it around, etc. Over the life of the playground, it's probably equal to that dollar amount. You spend about $12,000, $13,000 a year in mulch per building. It's amazingly expensive stuff. And then you spend that much. It's like, say you spend $12,000 at Oxbridge, it's like $7,000 for the mulch and $5,000 for the labor to have it put down on a weekend, renting a bobcat, etc. It's an expensive thing. It over the course of the life of the equipment, it's a wash. The cost, probably the best way to put it. So,
Mike, what about snow removal and playing during the winter months? Any comments on this?
If you use the plastic shovels like we do for the sidewalks and stuff, without the metal strip on them, you can remove the snow from around these play structures so that the kids aren't waiting until, nature melts the snow before they get out there. I mean, I was walking at Oxbridge today because I might have somebody that wants the swing sets, and the mulch was frozen, which means you can't use the playground today. So that's not something that happens with this type of surfacing.
And it doesn't get muddy.
Yeah.
And I imagine there might be some health issues too. I mean, it's the newer surface is more dust-free and cleaner kind of in general. I have no background on that, but that would just seem intuitive. I don't know if anybody has any experience with that.
We haven't, it's a good question, Jan. We haven't historically had any health issue with mulch or dirt. I mean, it's again, that maintenance layer to it and the, kids bringing the material in and out of the building unknowingly. Those are the big takeaways. And I don't think there's been any health issue relative to the material itself and sort of latex allergic situation I've heard of. So that's a good question, but not my experience.
Does it affect the drainage at all?
There's underslab, there's drainage in the area to accommodate this.
Yeah, and the drainage, Nick, everything leading up to the underside of that is unchanged. That's by the site work contract. So that's, the drainage is okay for that. There's no redesign needed.
No.
It's not impervious though, right?
I'm sorry?
Is it pervious or?
No, it's impervious.
Okay.
I would motion to keep this the way you have it, because that other stuff with mulch and stuff, as Mike said, and so on and so forth, I just think it's tremendously value added.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next item, but happy to thank you for that discussion. This one, tough to put a graphic to. A trenchless repair of the existing force main. This is one that I don't think we can actually make a decision on today, but I wanted to bring to your attention. There's a $50,000 ad, and I would recommend that you hold it as an allowance. This alternate requests a new lining and repair put into the existing force main pipe if CCTV video shows damage to the inside of that pipe. So the base bid requires that the site contractor video the inside of the existing pipe, and then this value is something that I recommend you hold as an allowance or an alternate to provide for repair of that if it's needed.
This was, Amy, if I recall right, this was to be instead of digging up the entire force main and putting in a new one, right?
That's correct. Right. The existing force main is not in the way of any of the new site utilities. So it would be a savings. This, even the $50,000 add represents a savings to the project overall by being able to reuse the existing pipe in its location.
Okay. All right.
So this is a diagram of some off-site storage of your existing additional soil material. And so I wonder if Rusty, perhaps you want to speak to this item, but the value is $160,000 if we do not go with the proposed off-site location.
So we located a site right up at the junction of 124 and the Merritt Parkway, which is 1.1 miles from the school. It's a straight shot. If you can picture it, the maintenance facility for the Department of Transportation is on the right, and the entranceway to the Merritt Parkway South is on the left. And right in that area is a large area that currently just has trees and some grass and stuff around it. And the Department of Transportation historically has used this for storage of soil, storage for cut down trees and branches. They stage equipment and store vehicles there. And so we approached their headquarters and got a quick no. We didn't take that answer. So we went to the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, who is very, very much on board with this, because they don't like the fact that when the DOT has trucks and stuff there, you can see it right from the Merritt Parkway, and the Merritt Parkway is a very special road. So we put together a very detailed presentation for directly to District 3 of the maintenance department in the DOT, and involved the Merritt Parkway Conservancy because of the nature of the road. It has to be involved in those decisions. They went and chatted with the new manager of District 3. We then submitted the application and got a summary, literally 24 hours later, a no with no explanation. So we're on phase 3 currently. I called Costa up last week, who is the head of the OSC GNR, and said this project's going to cost us $450,000 more if you don't help us out and get this through the Department of Transportation. He said, I'm on it. So he is going to talk to the commissioner of the DOT. I have not, this was on Friday, I've not heard from him yet. I will touch base with him tomorrow, and hopefully this will move through. It's really a win-win situation because we're bringing the soil in, and as part of the use of that soil, we'll be doing some berming and plantings with native plants, all under the Merritt Parkway Conservancy's direction. It's really a win-win. There's no reason for them not to do it. Should, however, that fail, we have a plan 4. We have spoken to once, and they are very much on board, to Bob Duff, who is the chairman of, is the majority leader of the Senate. And Carlo Leone, who is also a senator, but more importantly, he's chairman of the Transportation Committee. So they're ready to step in if we need to, and if it has to involve the governor, which we're trying not to, he's got enough on his hands right now, but at least these two guys. So one way or another, we're hopeful that we will get this thing done, and we'll not have to spend the $160,000 or the $450 if we have to bring in brand new soil. It's been quite a saga and an education on dealing with some of the state departments. That's where we are.
And with that, Russ, I will have George get in contact with Sean's and just get a confirmation of when they really need to have a decision on that as far as their efforts once they start with foundation excavation.
Right.
That would be good, because that'll give me an excuse to call Costa.
Yep.
See if I can push him a little.
So this 160,000 then represents the cost of not storing the soil on site should we not have this option that Rusty's exploring. Is that correct?
Right.
Basically, what happens is the trade contractor then has to find Sean's Lawns has to find their own location for it. They dig it up, and they are responsible to do with it what they need to. And then they also have to bring back material when phase 2 starts that would have normally been coming from this location. They have to bring it in from elsewhere. So it's, they have to deal with it instead of us providing a site.
Okay.
And this is their quote that they gave as an alternate when they gave their bid.
Correct.
For doing that.
Correct.
Yep.
So this one remains on hold until we hear back from our wonderful government.
Correct.
Sounds like it. But as Dave mentioned, we will need a response within a certain amount of time in order for the site contractor to plan for where to put this soil if it's rejected.
Dave, if you can send me an email or something in writing that indicates that mandatory date.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Give me a day or two to get that, and I'll get it over to you, or I'll have George get it to you as soon as we get it from Sean's.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the end of the site work alternates, and moving on to the building alternates. This first one, no graphic for this. This is the roof warranty. Your base bid includes a 20-year roof warranty, which is allowed and required by OSCGR. Some towns like to have a 30-year roof warranty, and if that in fact is what you would like, we had to ask for a separate price on that and include it as an alternate, because that portion, the additional 10 years, is not reimbursable by the state. So this allows the state to reimburse you on the first 20 years of the roof warranty, and the value of this alternate at an additional $40,000 gives you 10 more years of warranty. So that's a decision that you can make, within your own comfort level.
And
Mike Lynch, what he thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, your point of view on this?
Were you asking me a question, Diane?
Same thing as Kip. Yeah, I was wondering what your point of view would be on it.
20 years is the standard.
It is.
I've never dealt with a 30-year roof warranty. I don't know if that just, I'm sure it just covers the material, not the labor. I'm not sure if it covers the flashing, which is where probably 85% of your roof leaks originate from.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if it's worth it. But I've never had a 30-year roof warranty, so I don't have any experience in it. I won't be here when it expires.
You live expired or what? Did you find out what it covers?
But I don't know. I mean, Rusty, you've done some buildings. Have you ever had a 30-year roof warranty? Because I just haven't.
I have, and it actually came into play, but not because it didn't come into play in year 20 to 30. It came in year 12, where there was actually a fault in the manufacturing process, and the whole roof had to be replaced. But I'd like to know, per your comments, on what exactly is covered by both of the warranties.
I can provide you with the actual copy of the specification section for roofing, and that will detail out the information that you're asking for as far as what's covered. But my own experience and if you don't mind me giving a personal opinion, I think that if there's a faulty single ply roof membrane, you're going to know about it before 20 years is up.
It would seem to me that in addition to knowing, what's covered by the warranty, whether flashing and all the things where the problems might occur, I agree. This sounds like an unnecessary addition and not necessarily to provide, if you will, a sustainable roof. It's going to be either filling before that or not. It would seem to me. That's a judgment call, but I wouldn't waste much more time on this one.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. This one is a design decision. This is a pattern, or a fritted glass, we call it, where the pattern is kind of etched into one of the glass surfaces of your double pane exterior glazing. In this case, we have recommended 3 different patterns utilizing the shape of leaves, as we talked about. Always, the design intent for this building is bringing the outdoors in and really recognizing the importance of that connection. The leaves in the upper right-hand corner represent local tree leaves that we see around town. We'd use a combination of those and come up with a design with the glass manufacturer to provide 3 versions of that same frit pattern. One that's more leaves, one on top of the other, that would be more of a solid looking pattern and give more obscure the vision more. And then less and less of that pattern, to where there are 3 versions of it, in less etching in each. So I've tried to represent where that would be located. If the alternate is accepted, that would be a fritted pattern on the main entry glass box, and that would show up as the heavier version of the frit pattern at the lower level to about 7 feet high. And then the mid level would be a little less of a pattern, and then even less pattern at the top, allowing more light in overhead, which is appropriate and helps for shading, and also a little less of that pattern showing. So if that explanation is good enough, then you'll notice that at the ELP common rooms facing the courtyard only, we are suggesting the same obscure frit pattern at the lowest level, then getting lighter and lighter as you move up along that wall as well. That's inside the ELP common room. And then also facing the courtyard on the 2 other sides of the L, or the donut, we'll say, the south and the east facing glass on the west wing. It would be sort of a random placement of that frit pattern on the glazing. And as you can see here, this is where we were recommending it in the south facade, and it would be very similar on the east facade of the west wing. But it would allow the glass to have that etching pattern, and the shadow on the corridor within the building would have the leaf pattern as well.
Amy, did I understand you right that this would need to be approved before you went to work with the glass manufacturer, so we wouldn't actually see a final design?
Well, we would share the final design with you, of course. And if anyone in particular wants to be in our in a group of people who make that approval, happy to include you. Because it's a custom pattern, we've asked the glass manufacturer to just carry it as a custom pattern, and then we'll work with them on a combination of what they can etch, how detailed, and what we'd like to see. So they're aware that it's leaves utilizing these images in the upper right-hand corner in a pattern to be determined. And that allows us to have some flexibility depending upon the glazing manufacturer and their capabilities, and working with their graphic designer with ours.
Great.
Amy, is the base bid just a standard frit or no frit, or what's the?
No frit, so it'd be clear glazing.
Amy, I was wondering if you could touch on any practical aspects of adding frit to the glass would have. Obviously, it's an aesthetic, not improvement, it's an aesthetic addition. But you talked about the light coming through and shadows, and just the interest and educational component all seem to be pretty positive. But practical considerations as far as visibility, pros and cons of that, maybe obscuring views in or out, based on your experience as a school designer, what that would added value would be.
Sure. So, we do think it's important for there to be good visibility at entries. But I will say that at your entrance, there's what's called an AI phone, and the campus monitor will have a clear vision of who they're letting in and out of the building because of that camera. So whether this obscures the vision or not doesn't matter in terms of security, but it does. Your impression on the interior might be that you're less in a fishbowl, but again, it's an aesthetic choice. But I do think that, sometimes people feel self-conscious if they feel like they're sitting in an area that's all clear glass. That's, again, very personal, choice. But that's why we've thought of the more dense imagery, more dense etching at the level where a person is, between ground and 7 feet, and then it gets less and less as you go up. Now, that being said, I do like the idea of the shadows and the playfulness. I do think that that's kind of an exciting thing for students to notice throughout the course of the day as they're walking down the hall. And so as a matter of interest in the building, I think it's, something, and it's a nice add. It's not necessary for the HVAC system. There's a U value for that glazing, because it's double glazed and there's a gas in between the two layers of glass. You're getting the same U value either way, but the shadows may make you feel a little cooler in the hot months, but probably insignificant.
Great, thank you. And then I guess,
I'm sorry. I want to ask a question about what Nick said, following up on the glazing. that is the exterior side of this glass will all be smooth, so it's easy to clean, right? All of the etchings will be on the inside.
That's correct. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Diane.
And this can be achieved with the security glazing, with the inner layers and everything?
That's correct, yes.
I'd like to get the opinion of the Architectural Review Board on this. They tend to want to have more traditional looks, particularly they concentrate on the outside of the building, and ones that have some longevity. And I think we have a member that's on the Architectural Review Board, but I think this really needs to be bounced through him to through
This may have
that.
been part of the design that we presented to them, and you might remember better. It might have been part of what they approved.
Right, I believe that that's true, Diane. I will go back and verify that because that's a good point, Rusty. And I also want to point out that all of this, the majority of this occurs inside the courtyard only, where the Architectural Review Board really didn't have any purview. But at the main entrance, I would agree with you that we should run it by Dan and others who might be concerned.
Do you have any basic renderings that would show, you know, the no frit versus a frit pattern?
So all of our renderings show no frit because that is the base bid. And if you'd like, if you're unable to make the decision without a rendering, I can certainly find out if we can run that.
Amy, I definitely remember Dean having drawings that included them because we, you know, in the design, like last summer, we had gone back and forth with so many different iterations of this where maybe they were going to be color, maybe they were going to, so I would think that there would be something in the catalog.
Okay, I'll look for it. I think you're right, Katie, but they were just dots. So they weren't an exact replication of what he was proposing, which is the leaf pattern. But we did have some photos, and similar to what I placed here in the, you know, on this image that you're looking at, he did pull some photos of other installations that showed frit patterns. If you remember, we also looked at little handprints as an example, and your committee thought that that might be too playful or too, you know, not appropriate for the school. So we went with leaves.
I think if, just to help on this one, if there are any renderings of like non-frit versus frit, because again, Diane raises the questions that are in my mind relative to the function. Aesthetically, you know, you can pick that question, but I am concerned around, I want to make sure the visibility is good. And if it does add a little bit of takes the edge off of incoming light, that could be a good thing. But conversely, I'm also concerned that if there's busyness and shadows on the floor and what it's casting out for kids who have visual needs, you know, is that too much? So that's sort of my push-pull here with the fritting. If there's a way to kind of like have a nice clean look that takes some of the edge off the light coming in and gives that appearance that you're not completely in a fishbowl, that those seem admirable goals. But I do have a concern about, you know, kind of what does it feel like to be the user, the kid walking through the building, or the faculty. And if we're particularly looking at the courtyard too, having those nice lines of visibility for little kids out there with adults is always good. So if there is a rendering, I think we're struggling to understand, like, what does it feel like to actually be walking by these windows one way versus the other.
Sure. And I think that that's why it's not a continuous pattern in the corridors in the courtyard. It is meant to be random and placed, as you can see in the bottom right, just in occasional glass areas, just to give visual interest, but that you would still have clear glass for the majority of your eye level locations as you're walking by, which is the middle panel of glass on each floor.
Amy, is it possible to get photographs of something that's similar to this? I think photographs would be very much more useful in making a decision than drawings.
Sure. Yes, I will look for examples, and what might be difficult is finding leaf pattern in a actual real life example, but I'll do that. I'll look for it.
And then the other question might be, we may, following a little more discussion of this, we may find it's more appropriate in some locations than the others too. We may find, yeah, for whatever reason, maybe at the ELP courtyard wall, that's a great place to kind of create a sense of community and privacy for activities that happen in there, but maybe it's too busy at the other elevations, or for other reasons we don't want it at the front. So I think that's something we should just weigh also. It may be something that is used, not to overcomplicate this, but if we're going to kind of design it, we should really think it through as to where it works best.
Sure, I think that's an interesting idea, Diane. And so what we could do is, as we move forward and proceed with this decision, we can ask the contractor to break out the pricing in each of the areas.
What's our timing on this one, Amy?
Dave, I believe, you're probably going to say that curtain wall and storefront are a long lead item, and so it's not going to be installed this winter, but it's probably something that we should decide upon this winter in order to make sure that the manufacturer gets it.
Agreed, especially that, when we've seen in past months that we are having, we are very mindful of glazing procurement because we're finding some long lead times has been affected by the pandemic. So I would say that we have a month to make that decision, but I would not, just to be safe, I really would not wait much longer than that, just to make sure that we're not interrupting the submittal process for the curtain wall and glazing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. This is moving into the interior, and this is an alternate that we had in place, again, as a price control at the classroom teaching walls. This includes DLC rooms, the foreign world language room, art room, and all of the standard classrooms. And what this involves is what you see highlighted on this image is a low portion of marker boards added to the room. The standard marker board height is about 3 foot high off the ground, perfectly fine for adults and teachers to use. So your classrooms in the base bid have just the marker boards along on each side of the interactive board in the middle. So perfectly appropriate and fine for teachers who are not going to probably bend down and use a lower portion. But in conversations with your faculty and staff, we talked about the addition of marker boards at this low level between the floor base and the bottom of the typical height marker board, where your younger students might be able to participate and do drawings or write words and share things with their classmates. So it just gives a little bit more writing surface to the teaching wall, but it's in particular good for the students to be interactive at that wall. So marker board low under all of the teaching walls comes in at 2 different values. B3A is the addition of marker boards directly under the center board at $8,843, and B3B is marker boards under the current marker boards. So maybe just to imagine this as extended full height marker board surface on either side of the interactive board, and that's at a value of $20,315. And again, that's for every single teaching space in the building.
Amy, are these surfaces magnetic?
They are, yes, magnetic as well. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, faculty at all of our room data meetings were very strongly in favor of these, having that extra wall space, both for hanging items, for using for visuals, big hit to have these for classrooms.
Do you need both 3A and 3B or just 3B?
I think the more the better, to be honest. It's a function of how the room have to be arranged, if they have to move items in front of the board and to the side of the board. So the more flexibility, the better.
They're nice. These are a good addition.
Say that again, please.
These are a good educational addition.
All right. Alternate B4 was put into the project to, again, be a pricing control in case we needed to reduce the cost of the project. Your schools typically have a solid door between the cafeteria and the servery. And that's what's in your base bid. And that's what's represented in these images on the left, which came from the manufacturer's standard webpage. You'd have a solid door all the way to the floor to open from the cafeteria into the servery. And you'd have a smaller version, counter height, at the area where students will be returning their trays and plates at the dishwash area. So again, on the left, base bid is solid, and that's what was requested by Mike Lynch and your food service professionals. I think it also keeps the kitchen quiet from the cafeteria if you wanted to use the cafeteria as a breakout teaching space or for some activities while they're prepping for lunch waves. If you wanted to save $13,000, a very common alternative of the same security coiling door is the open metal mesh that you see in the images on the right. So that is something that some school districts prefer because perhaps their kitchen and food service employees want oversight of the cafeteria even when it's closed, quote unquote, the kitchen is closed. But it also allows the smells and the noise of food prep to come into the rest of the building. So up to you. $13,000 savings.
Just for what it's worth, we'd appreciate the solid for all the reasons you mentioned, Amy, and let alone the other pieces that when we do practice lockdown drills, it's important for the faculty, excuse me, the staff at the cafeteria to also feel secure that they've got a spot they can get to. So
that's a good point.
I've used both, and I'd go with stay with the solid, frankly.
Yep, great.
Okay, well, solid is the base bid, so this will be an easy decision when you get to that, when you need to vote on each. And this is my last slide for alternates. I grouped them all here because there's not really a need for graphics for describing these. Alternate B5 is lightning protection, and it's a deduct alternate. Again, it was used, all four of these were being used to control the price in case the bids came in over budget. But if you wanted to eliminate lightning protection at the building, you would save $25,000. And the other three are a change in material for some piping. As a design team, and because your bids came in very favorable, we don't recommend going with any of these because the original material, the base bid material, is more durable, or at least more tried and true over time. But if you'd like to entertain the idea, certainly the PVC piping would last the 20 years that's required by OSDGR for durability of providing a new building. But as a design team, we don't necessarily recommend that you go with these. But you would save $40,000 if you changed the cast iron stormwater piping to PVC. You would save $20,000 if you changed the copper condensate piping to PVC. And you would save $50,000 if you wanted to change the above ground sanitary and vent piping to PVC from cast iron. Those would be within the walls of the building, and in that case, it might also cause some acoustic concerns.
Amy, I don't recall from looking at the alternates in ONG's August 13th detailed proposal for the last two. Are they something new in the process, or were they sort of expanded?
Again, I think that these were added to the project upon the CD estimate when it was coming in, estimated at coming in $1 million over budget. We wanted to build in as many possible savings to the project as we could if we needed to control the budget at this period. So they may have been added after August.
Yeah, and they may have been grouped. They may have been combined in our estimate, Kip, whereas we identified them separately in the bidding documents.
That's true too.
Yeah, because all you had, David, was B6, deduct PVC pipe at above ground stormwater piping
Okay.
in lieu of cast iron.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
yeah, so the condensate and bulk sanitary, we may have added last minute, Kip. If that's what that description was.
Could you just explain condensate piping? What is that? Just basically a gutter or a downspout?
No, condensate piping is piping that runs in the building, and it's condensate that's generated from the HVAC equipment.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Basically, like, your air conditioner drips water outside of the house, right? If you have a window air conditioner, this is condensate.
Yep.
I think you meant lightning protection, not lightening.
You're right. No E.
Was the lightning protection considered unnecessary originally? I'm not sure about that one.
I think that we can have Mike answer that, but you're correct. It being relatively short building, 2 stories, it's not necessary. And I'm sure that at the time we probably asked Mike what was the standard at your other schools. I don't know, Mike, if you have a comment on that.
Mike is had to temporarily step out, I think.
Okay. I'm sorry.
He'll be back momentarily.
I remember questioning the necessity of it at one point, and the comment was nobody can predict where lightning strikes.
Brilliant.
We do a lot of single-story and 2-story buildings. We don't put lightning protection on it.
Right. I would say that it's a belt and suspenders. It's not a requirement on a 2-story building. And most of your building is in fact 1 story above grade.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't we, Amy, go back and look at that summary list, and I think we can pick off some of these today, and other ones we're going to defer. I think that would be the approach.
Sure.
Yeah, so just for the group, we did identify those 4 on that slide there as ones that we do need a decision because of the fact that MEP coordination is going, that we do need to be able to identify what is the piping material that we're putting into the coordination model, because it's going to make a difference as far as the spatial area that it takes up. So.
Understood.
Okay.
Did we talk about S6? Yes. Okay. Well, if we go down here, here's what I heard from the discussion, that raised garden area at 15,000 is a no-brainer. It ought to be included. I'm giving my point of view, so I want everyone else can chime in. The embankment slide sounds like something that, if possible, it should be when the time is right, it may be a PTO project, that the curved stairs ought to remain in. There's no reason. I'm sorry.
Kip, can I say one thing though? But it's still, regardless, it sounds like the funding to the project would be possibly by the PTO, but we would still need the alternate to be executed through us to be able to lock in that pricing.
Okay.
For it. So I would suggest that action be taken on it as if the committee is okay with it, and then the funding from the PTO to the project would have to be worked out separately.
Is that acceptable, Katie?
Yes, that's fine. It'll have to go through Duke and Dr. Adley anyway. So
Right.
we have all the players here.
All right, well, you know where to find them. It sounds to me like the deducting for the curved, taking the curved stairs out does not really have any major appeal. It's not a big savings. The big one is the playground surface material, and is what I heard from Mike is it really, over the life of the material, you're almost a net wash compared to labor and chips every year, or mulch, I should say. And you don't have the tracking in of the dirt into the school as a result. The trench, we're leaving the trenchless repair of the existing force main out until they do the television camera of the existing main. And the storage of on-site material is really subject to what Rusty can get from either Costa or from, if we have to go to Plan 4, which is going for the state senators. But Dave, you have to give Rusty an information as to when that critical decision must be made.
Yes.
Roof warranty sounds like there's not much appeal for a 30-year warranty versus a 20-year warranty. Fritted glass seems to be, we need some design or some pictures so people can understand it better and re-examine how many places in the building you want to actually use it. It sounds like the marker boards, both B3A and B3B, are highly desirable from an educational point of view. And it sounds like the coiling divider versus the solid divider, the solid divider still seems to win the day. We don't need lightning protection, it sounds like, and the other deducts, since they're in the program right now, the deducts, we don't really need those deducts. We've already got enough savings. So I would say that take the lightning protection out, but leave the rest of them as is. In other words, do not go down to PVC in B6, B7, and B8, but be in cast iron or whatever. Now that's just my quick summary, but it seems to me we can make some decisions today, especially on your green ones, except for S6, and we can make some on some of the other ones as well today. Anybody on the committee feel differently that we can possibly move on some of these?
This is Diane. Kip, I agree with all the items you went through. Only question I have is whether there should be a little bit more feedback on the lightning protection, whether that's something, I'm just a little uneasy with that, making that decision without maybe having a little more knowledge. I know we've talked about it in the past, but maybe just a little more conversation on that. But otherwise, I agree with all the items that you went through.
Since that turns out to be a green item, which is schedule critical, what would you suggest that we need to do to get better information to make a decision?
Ask the insurance company.
Do we know how that factors in with the PV panels?
Can you repeat the question?
As far as what? As far as tying in the PV panels, or are you worried about it possibly hindering the installation of the PV panels?
Yeah, no, not hindering operation, more or less tying in. I mean, does the design change to it if we have panels and et cetera, or was that taken into account? I don't know.
I would
Panels will
think
probably be taller than the lightning protection.
And I would think if you, right, and I would think if, you know, typically that loop up at the roof level, right, that braided cabling travels along the parapet with the rods on the parapet, you know, with, if there are things on the roof that require it, there is a run from that piece of equipment on the roof, you know, laterally to the nearest parapet wall where it then ties in. So I would say that the functionality would be there for future things like the PV panels to be tied, you know, to be able to have added onto it lightning protection for them if needed.
Right, but that's not currently bought or designed.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Any lightning protection for the PV panel system would have to be part of that separate project.
I'm in favor of not doing it, but again, last time we discussed this, again, the comment was made that no one can predict where lightning strikes, so I'll leave it at that, I guess.
I agree with Nick, and if it's needed for the PV panels, I mean, we put it in at that point.
But would that be just for the panels, or would that also protect the building too, if you put them in for the panels?
No, that would only be because for the building itself, you actually have to ground to the steel structure, and there's a loop that actually has to get placed around the footprint of the building as they're doing foundations for that.
Oh, okay.
But again, lightning tends to strike the tallest part of a building, and all those PV panels will be higher than the building itself.
They'll be higher than the building, but lower than the parapet and the HVAC units, which are also on the roof.
Correct.
I apologize for my ignorance here, but I just want to confirm that the lightning protection we're talking about is more about protecting the electrical systems of the building. There's no safety risk to anybody within the building. Is that correct? With or without this?
I think that's true. You know, if someone happens to be touching some metal on the building when the building exactly gets hit, everyone's at risk. And you're talking to someone my husband was actually hit by lightning, so it happens occasionally. What's that?
Inside the building as well, touching like a metal?
It was indoors, yeah. But there was a leak in that building. He was near a metal door. He had steel toe boots on. There's a lot of factors at play, right?
Well, I mean, just
I would be remiss. Yeah, I would be remiss to say that it can't happen, but it's very, very unlikely.
Well, having this conversation now the way that we are, it seems a little crazy to me that we're talking about a nearly $60 million building and we wouldn't put $25,000 into it to keep all of our children and staff safe. So I think the conversation's a little different, knowing that is
again, I don't think your students and your staff are in danger unless they were coincidentally holding something that got hit. But I do think it would protect your technology equipment or other mechanical equipment in the building, and that your insurance company would more likely want to weigh in on this than one of us.
Right. Ask the insurance company, they know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can't get some stuff decided today and make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that we approve alternate S1, that we approve alternate S2 with the hopes that it will be presented eventually to the PTO for funding, that we disapprove S3, which is the deduct, that we approve S4 playground surface material, that we disapprove B1 roof warranty extended to 30 years, that we approve B3A and B3B, that we, I thought that the B4 was is that a deduct or it's a deduct?
Yeah.
We disapprove B4, that we approve B6, B7, and B8, and if we want to come back, we're going to be meeting, I guess, next week on the final package of bid scope. We can go back and look at B5 next week, but that's our deadline. We've got to do it by then, right, Dave?
Yes, and Kip, I believe you want to state that you want to disapprove B6, B7, and 8 and B8 because they are deducts. So you do not want to accept that deduct.
Correct. Disapprove. We want to. Yes. Shall I do it again? We want to approve. I make a motion that we approve S1, S2, that we disapprove S3, that we approve S4, that we disapprove B1 or not approve B1, that we approve B3A, B3B, that we disapprove B4, that we disapprove B6, B7, and B8. And we'll come back and we must answer B5 by our next week's meeting. That would be my motion for today with regard to the alternates. Is there a second for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second. It's Diane.
Thank you. Is there discussion? Have I left anything out? Have I confused anything from where we've gone through this? Okay, well, all in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Any negative votes, any nays? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, Amy, for.
Kip, I just want you to know that the total for what was accepted today was $260,845, and the total of not accepted would have been a deduct of $90,838. Those are the totals from the decisions today.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the next order of business, I think we've already covered the off-site soil storage issue when we were discussing the alternatives. Item number 8, I was only really trying to make the point that in every one of the scope reviews, it's become very clear that a subcontractor was required in their bid to include the cost of a performance bond and liability insurance within their bid, and everyone had to confirm that fact, so that we have, then on top of that, we have the performance and payment bond that the general contractor will be signing as well. So we have, I would say, if you will, double level of protections that payment and performance will occur. This was a major issue when they did the project in town called the Shuffle, where they took over the Board of Education, moved in the library and moved away from Town Hall, and Town Hall became the location for the senior center, et cetera, where the contractor defaulted and the performance bond turned out to be worthless. So we had to make a lot of extra settlements. That is not going to be the case here today, and that was really the only reason I wanted to put down item number 8. Is there any other matters to be discussed today on the building project?
So Kip, just for clarification, all the subs will have their own bond as well as ONGAP.
That's
Again,
correct.
Nick. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you, Nick. All the subcontractors will have their own bond?
As well as ONGAP.
Correct.
That's correct.
Are there any other matters to discuss today? Hearing none, is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion, Katie.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much for your attention to this meeting, and thank you again. We're all
Thank you
set.
all for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.